Hello, everybody. My name is Ursula Tischner, and I'm the CEO of Econcept Agency for Sustainable Design in Cologne. And I would like to thank the organizers that they have asked me to be here with you and give you a keynote presentation on eco design and circular design strategies. I will share my screen so that you can see my presentation, and I hope it will work. Okay, so I will talk about eco-design generally, what it is, some definitions, and also circular design strategies and principles, and show you some examples, and end with some further reading recommendations. All right, so I think we are all here because we basically know that the world has some issues, or humanity has some issues to solve. From climate change, the next 10 to 15 years are decisive if we can manage to fight climate change and to avoid that we're going beyond that tipping point where all the weather conditions are out of order. Then beyond that, we have resource scarcity issues. We have injustice between rich and poor, between North and South, gender and generations. There is a loss of biodiversity that is really dramatic. And we need some transitions in energy systems, in mobility systems, in food systems. And I think we also know that our lifestyles in the West, in the Western industrialized countries, are pretty unhealthy. So there's a lot to do for us today and in the future. And then the younger generations are now going to the streets and they are protesting against us, the older generations who have a say at the moment and who are in power, because they are afraid that we are going to ruin their future. And if you see figures like the Earth Overshoot Day, that means the day when we have consumed everything that the planet can renew within 1 year, happens already earlier in 2021. It was the 5th of May, where we in Germany actually have consumed all that material and resources. So no wonder that the young generations are going to the streets and they are asking us to change our behavior and our politics and how we do business and everything. So to summarize that is we are trashing the planet, we're trashing the people, and we're not even having fun, like Annie Leonard says, who does this wonderful little video clips on the story of stuff, the story behind the stuff. So I think we really need to act and to do something against the way we live today. And we have to invent some cool new lifestyles and new production consumption systems, how we can live better in the future. And then there are some frameworks like the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. I'm pretty sure you know these. It's the 17 goals from water to life below water, to poverty, to resource issues, to how industry works, and so on. And these are like guidelines for us how to change what we do. But there's also the circular economy, and that's very relevant today for our topic, because the circular economy, or the cradle-to-cradle philosophy, has actually defined these two cycles, the biological cycle and the technical cycle, that we should try to close with everything that we do, either produce stuff that is bio-based and that can go back to nature and become food for nature again, or technical materials and technical things that can be reused, recycled, and so on in the technical sphere, so that nothing is lost, everything can be reused and regenerated within our economy and our systems. Why do we focus on product design? Because product design is very, very relevant, as it happens very early when we think about what kind of product do we want to produce and what kind of materials we want to use and so on. And you can say that it's about 80% of all the impacts that are happening in the whole life cycle of a product system are predetermined in the product design phase. So that's why we should really focus in product design on the whole sustainability and eco aspects. Also, use phase and end of life phase are important, but they are a little bit more difficult to influence. And then there are some trade-offs, like people use the good products in a way that is not very sustainable. So that is why I always say it's not just about product design, but we actually need to look at the whole system, and we need to design products and services together so that the whole system can become more sustainable. So design actually at the moment is a little bit still in the creator of the overconsumption, these nice little coffee cups, coffee capsules that are creating some kind of well-tasting coffee, and they look really nice and cool, but they are an environmental disaster. So we designers could actually do much better, and we could actually enable sustainable lifestyles. To stay in the example of coffee, you could see that some of our students have actually developed some coffee cups that are produced out of the leftover of the coffee shop. So the coffee grinds, they are compressed and dried, and then you can make that little cup and you can drink from it, and then you can throw it out because it's a totally biological waste. You can biodegrade it, and there's no toxic substances involved at all. So we as a designer have a choice. Do we do the one or do we do the other? Design is a tool. We can use it in both ways, basically. That brings us to design for sustainability, so that what we actually need is design that is good for the people and good for the planet, and also creates value and wealth for as many people as possible, and not only short-term profit for a few. So I prefer, in this triple bottom line approach of people, planet, profit, I prefer not to talk about profit, but to talk about value for as many people as possible. And so design that wants to create sustainability is actually called design for sustainability or sustainable design. It's kind of an umbrella, and it includes eco-design, it includes circular design, design for recycling, more the eco aspects, but it also includes social aspects, cultural aspects, so social design, humanitarian design, base of the pyramid design for the poor people, and so on. All of that is subsumized under the headline of design for sustainability or sustainable design. And today we focus a little more on eco-design and circular design. So what are typical eco-design strategies? Normally we look at the whole product life cycle, and we try to figure out what can we do in the product component level, what can we do on the product structure level, what can we do on the product system level, so in the different phases of the life cycle. But most importantly, always at the beginning, we try to rethink what do we really want to deliver in terms of function or in terms of use. So no one actually wants to have a coffee machine. What people want is well-tasting coffee. So our question would be, how can we create well-tasting coffee, but with the most sustainable option or the most eco-efficient option? And then we always look at the whole life cycle, as I said, from material extraction to material processing to manufacturing to the use phase, but also the end of life phase after use. And we try to close as much as possible the cycles within that system. So there should not be any waste. Everything should go back either directly in the use phase, like a second-hand product, or it can go back to remanufacturing when we take back products and use components and parts of the products again in the manufacturing phase, or it could go back to recycling when we recycle the materials. And the goal is to use as little as possible new virgin materials and to create as little as possible waste, but cycle everything into that system. So basically the idea is that value chains become value cycles, and it's not just always closed loop, so a cycle within one value system, but we can exchange between different value chains, and maybe the leftovers of one production can become virgin materials for another production, and so on. So materials, components, products can be exchanged between the different value chains. So, what are typical circular design strategies? I'm sure you have heard of the R's. So, the R's, all that is rethink, redesign, reduce, reuse, repair, remanufacture, recycle. These are typical circular design strategies where we try to close these loops as I have just explained. But most important phase from my point of view is the rethink, because we really have to question, okay, what do we want to deliver? How can we do that in the optimal way? If we start at the end, when the waste is already created, then it's too late. So we really have to start in the beginning. We have to design in the beginning systems and products and components and parts that can be fit into that circular system. If we start at the end, it will be a very inefficient system, and we want to have efficient systems. But besides of the redesign and so on, strategies, we also have the D strategies, which means more on the technological and on the material level. If we want to use products and components and materials in cycles, we have to disassemble stuff. We have to use materials that can be reusable and recyclable, but we also have to make product components and product constructions where everything can be disassembled. So we need to depolymerize the plastics. We need to de-alloy the metals. We need to delaminate if we have composite materials. We need to devulcanize if we go to rubber materials, and so on. So don't design anything that you can't disassemble anymore at the end of the life, but to design everything in a way that it can indeed be disassembled. It can be separated. The different materials can be disassembled. And if you have biological materials and technical materials, either don't mix them or make them so that you can disassemble them and feed them back into the biological or technical cycle. So just to show you some examples, circular design principles: we need to design for attachment and trust. We need to design for durability. Things should still last for a long time. We need to design for standardization and compatibility, so modular design, where the different parts can actually fit together, but then in the next product generation you have standardized connection and you can still use maybe parts of the pre-generation in the next generation, so standardization and compatibility of parts. You also need to design for maintenance and repair, so when you want a product to last very long, of course it should be repairable and should be easy to repair and very efficient. And you should design for adaptability and upgradability. So maybe a mobile phone, you don't need to throw it out every time a new product generation comes in, but you can maybe upgrade some parts, you can upgrade the software and the technology, and you can use the actual product longer than just 1 year or so. And finally, design for disassembly and reassembly. I just explained it, so everything should be disassemblable. That means you have to have connections and joints that you can disassemble. You should not glue parts together. You should not coat stuff so that you don't get rid of the coating and it would disturb recycling, and so on. 2 examples. We have a biological cycle here. That's a project of my students at Design Academy Eindhoven, and they have designed new packaging for fast food, and the packaging is actually designed using the leftovers from the potato industry, from the fast food industry. It's like an ice cone, and you can either eat it, it tastes pretty well, it has different tastes, or you can feed it to the animals and at least compost it at the end of its life. No toxic substances involved whatsoever. Then we have an example from a technical cycle. It's a company that we work with called ESE, Europe's largest producer of waste bins. And the ESE group has actually designed a system where the waste bins, once they are broken or they don't work anymore, they have a little truck that picks up those old waste bins, and in the truck directly the waste bins are disassembled, the material is shredded, and then the regranulated plastic can actually directly go back into their own production, and they have a 100% closed loop raw material cycle within their company. Now they started not to sell the waste bins anymore, but to offer them as a service concept. That means the municipalities don't have to buy the bins anymore, they just rent them, and ESA takes care of that. The bins are always in good order, and when a bin is broken, they take them back and they reuse them, they reuse the material. So it's a win-win-win situation for everybody involved. Then there is this whole urban mining, upcycling, vintage design strategies. We have here a project from my students in Zurich at the design school. They used old supermarket shelves, old mattresses, and old army blankets, and combined these different materials into a furniture series. As you can see here, it's called the Swiss Officer, der Schweizer Offizier, and it's a typical upcycling or vintage reuse design project. What we also need to take care of is materials. So we need a lot of new materials that are, for instance, made out of waste or from biological sources, and that can still be reused in technical systems. But then at the end, once you want to dispose them off, they don't put any harm in the environment. So here is a material based on sawdust or the paper industry. It's made from lignin. And it is compressed into these little pellets, and you can use it as thermoplastic plastics, like with injection molding and vacuum forming. It works like a plastic, but is actually based on waste from the wood industry. Also, new processes. Here are some examples where industry uses plastic that is collected and reused, like recycled plastics, and they produce filaments from it that you can then use in 3D printing machines. So you can actually print new products or spare parts, for instance, from the recycled or reused plastic parts. So an old part becomes a new part by the means of 3D printing. All of that has to be based on renewable energy, because every transformation process uses energy. Every transportation process uses energy. So the whole logistics, redistribution logistics, imagine you have to take back all your products, they have to be transported back to your company. All of that uses energy. So we need to use renewable energy, because otherwise all these transformation processes, when it's based on fossil fuel, on fossil energy, it will still increase climate change. So to fight climate change at the same time and make a circular economy sustainable, we need to base it on renewable energy sources. And longevity is still key, is still very important. For all the products that can potentially have a long life, I think it's still very, very important to say, no, we make it as long lasting as possible, especially if they don't have any technological progress, where you can save maybe energy or water through a very more efficient technology. If it's a piece of furniture, just make it long lasting and make it age in beauty gracefully with patina. And so you have the most efficient product for the sustainability. We can also try to influence user behavior by design, for instance with smart meters that tell you how much energy you consume, or with these flushes that tell you how much water you flush. The big flush means 5, the small bottle means 3 liters. You still have the choice as a consumer. We are not authoritarian, but we inform you about your choices, and we inform you about the consequences, the environmental consequences. And so there is something that we call nudging. We nudge the consumers a little bit with design interventions and product semantics to do the right thing and to choose the more eco options. Finally, a few words about how to do it. There are a lot of tools, meanwhile, that help you to do eco and circular and sustainable design. Some of them are rather complex, like life cycle assessment. Others are rather simple, like checklists and rules of thumb. And we always recommend that you have at least 3 set of tools. One is a tool for analysis, so you need to know what is the problem with your current products, where do you need to improve them, why do you need to improve them, what are the environmental impacts, and then you create some solutions. And then for the solution creation, you need guidance for your designers, so checklists, rules of thumb for the design phase. And then you need to do a final evaluation at the end when you have created a new design, a new solution, to figure out, is it really good enough, also from economic terms, from social terms, from environmental terms, so that it's good enough to be put onto the marketplace. And just very quickly, a few examples, because very often designers say, oh, I can't do an LCA, or I can't do an environmental analysis. Yes, you can if you use these tools like software tools like Sustainable Minds. I use them always with my designers. It's a kind of abridged LCA tool, and it is not too complicated to do it yourself. So you can use these kind of software tools. Meanwhile, there are eco modules for CAD, for CAD tools, computer-aided design tools like SolidWorks has meanwhile a SolidWorks sustainability module where you can do rough estimations if you have created a 3D model, how environmentally friendly or how environmentally impactful is it, and if you change the material or the construction, is it going to be better or is it going to be worse? So that can be integrated into a regular design process. And there are tools like circularity calculators, also especially designed for designers, so people who don't really like to calculate that much. And here the circularity and cost effects of products are actually captured, and you can quickly or roughly estimate how circular your product is indeed. Just a few ideas. There's more tools like that out there. So to conclude, I think it's a really fascinating and interesting job to do, the eco and circular design, but you have to be critical and really analyze and really estimate where is the need for change and how are the environmental and circularity impacts, and really check at the end, did you go into the right direction and did you do a new design that is really indeed better than the one that you have currently or the one that is on the market. And to help you with this kind of activities, I recommend two books. One is more a brochure. It is Eco Design for a Resource Efficient Economy, which I have written with my colleague Maike Hora, and you can download it for free from this link. And the other one is a book that I compiled or wrote and is called How to Do Eco Design. And this book has a nice toolbox at the end, giving you a lot of insights about tools that I just mentioned and many, many more. So check it out, download it for free, and go and start your journey into eco design and circular design. Thank you very much for your attention.